Hey everybody, it's Dorek here, and I've been seeing a pretty fair amount of new and returning players getting back into Lost Ark here, and trying to figure out how to best progress their character from where they currently are, whether they be like coming back to the game or they're just starting out. And given that there's a lot of different levels to gearing in the game, it could be a little bit confusing on where you might be at and how to get your character, you know, caught up. Now, if you're brand new or maybe you stop playing after a little bit right after launch, then you'll probably still need to be going through tier 1 and tier 2. But if you're in this situation, then there's been some global honing buffs to make that significantly easier for you and a lot faster. In tier 1, you have a 100% chance to succeed all of your hones from level 1 to 15 on each piece of gear. You won't fail at all while you're trying to get to tier 2. On top of that, the cost of materials has been reduced by a pretty decent amount, and I think it's like 20% less shards at this point. So you need a lot less in order to get to tier 2 at this point. If you're new, there's a lot of really good ways to get materials to help boost you past tier 1 at this point. Big ones are going to be the tier 1 islands, completing your tier 1 tower, and just doing like your general dailies, like your chaos dungeons and guardians. You don't need to feel obligated to complete the abyss dungeons that are in tier 1 and then go and craft the legendary gear. The chaos dungeon gear will be more than capable of getting to plus 15 where you need to in order to get to tier 2. In tier 2 for gearing, you're mostly looking at the same thing that you were doing in tier 1. The same global honing buffs that affected tier 1 were also in tier 2 as well. So you have less material usage and 100% success rate as you go up. You also have certain points where you'll actually get like double levels. The same thing happens in tier 1 as well. I think it's 1, 3, 7, or 1, 3, 5, 7, and 11. You'll get an extra level when you hone at those levels. As far as material gain, though, it's pretty much the same as well. There are different islands that are going to be for tier 2 so that you can get some mats. There's also the tier 2 tower, and your chaos dungeons and guardians will be your main source of material gain. Unfortunately, most people are kind of beyond this level of content, so it might be kind of hard to go in and matchmake a guardian raid in tier 2 and the same thing in tier 1. So you are kind of looking at either soloing those or seeing if you can find someone to help you through find party to get those done a little bit faster. One thing to note here is that you don't need to hone any of the pieces plus 50 or higher than plus 15 in tier 1 or tier 2. You won't need to do this. It's just going to be better for you to hone everything up until 15, because after that you can do it, but you won't have the increased success chance, and you only need to get to plus 15 on all of your pieces of gear in order to get to the next tier. Once you've done that in tier 2, like getting into tier 3 is where things will start to get slightly more complicated, but not by too much. Um, in tier 3, you will need to get a new set of Chaos Dungeon gear. This gear is not tradable, so in order to get a full set, you'll have to actually just do the very first Chaos Dungeon in Punica after you do the main story quest. In doing so, you might not actually finish your entire set in one run unless you're rested. It might take two. If you don't get it in two, then unfortunately you'll have to wait till the next day so that you can do Chaos Dungeon again, because it'll only drop gear when you have this aura of resonance. At the moment, there's no tier 3 tower like you were doing in tier 1 and 2, but there is Throne Spire, which does exist, and be able to complete that at generally a pretty lower item level, which will help give you a little bit of mat, some silver, some engraving chests, just to help you out. Your main source of material gain at this point is going to be from your Chaos Dungeons and your Guardians. And you'll want to just keep honing that first set of gear that you get all the way up until 1370. It's going to be plus 15 on each piece of gear again. At 1370, you'll want to start looking at your engravings. Now, what do I mean by engravings? Engravings are these extra things that you can get for additional power gain for your character. Think of them as like talent points, but you would equip them through your accessories or the actual equipable ones. Getting a 3x3 engraving build essentially is just saying that you're going to have 3 level 3 engraving. Getting a 3x3 engraving build is going to be not really too bad for you to do on your own, because one of the first things you're going to want to do at 1370 item level is do the hard mode Abyss dungeon Arya's Oculus and Orhea Preveza. When you do these, you're going to get these items called Imperium Dons, and these Imperium Dons can be used to craft the legendary set or one of the legendary sets in order like to progress your character further. If you go into the hard mode Abyss, and when you complete it, on the side there's going to be a sidereal blessing chest that you can buy. And if you buy this, then you will get 12 total from Arya's Oculus, and you're also going to get a first time clear chest that's going to have 10 more. And then once you do Orhea Preveza, you're going to get another 8 for completing the dungeon, and 8 more from buying the Sidereal Blessing chest, and then you'll also get a first time clear chest there for an additional 10. So total from your first time running through hard mode Abyss, at this point you will get 48 Imperium Dons on your first run. On top of getting those 48 Imperium Dons, you're also going to get class engraving accessories, legendary quality accessories that are going to have one of your class engravings on them. It's guaranteed to have one of your class engravings on them. So, in theory, if you have 5 accessories on and they all have +3, which legendary accessories can go up to +3, then you'll be able to have your class engraving accessory at level 3 by default, and then you would just need a mixture of your 2 equipable ones plus your stone in order to get a 3x3 build. And those Imperium Dons that you got, those are going to let you craft the Chosen set that we just showed. The legendary pieces of gear are upgradable all the way up to +20, which is going to be a 1490 item level. But when you transfer your old piece of gear to the legendary piece of gear, you're going to go from a +15 piece of gear to a +6. But the actual item level is not going to change. It's still going to be 1370 item level after you transfer it. You're just going to have the legendary piece of gear and have a new starting point. The other sets of legendary gear, those are going to come from running Argus. One thing to note too is that they also nerfed Argus, so they lowered the item level requirement for gate 2 and 3 down to 1370. So all 3 gates require 1370 item level minimum to get into and complete, and the difficulty with 2 and 3 was scaled down to match with 1370. So this is a fairly simple fight to get through. If you finish Argus for your first time, though, you will get a total of 40 Argus Bloods, and that's buying the Sidereal Blessing chest at the very end of each gate. You'll get 20 from buying all the chests and finishing the gates, and you'll get 20 more from a first-time clear chest. There's 2 craftable sets that are made with the Argus Blood, and those 2, they have different set bonuses. But the only set bonus that you're really going to care about is going to be the 2-piece. This is because with your 48 Imperium Dons and your 40 Argus Blood, you can craft a full set of legendary gear, but it's going to be mixed up between these 2 sets. You can craft 4 pieces of Chosen gear and 2 pieces with Argus. And the most efficient way to use these materials is going to be by crafting your Chosen weapon and 3 Chosen armor pieces. And then you'll want to craft your remaining 2 armor pieces from the Argus sets. This is because the materials like Imperium Dons and Argus Blends can be dismantled into Great Honor Leapstones, but Imperium Dons can only be dismantled with a 1-to-1 ratio, whereas Argus Blood is between 1 and 3 Great Honor Leapstones per blood. The other reason why is because the 5 set bonus from the Preordained set or the Harsh Oath set is worth pretty much nothing, so you don't need to spend more Argus Bloods on it because it requires someone else in your group to have the other set from you, which is just super unlikely to run into someone at this point that's actually doing that. Once you've crafted your legendary gear though, you'll want to hone it up to 14, 15 item level, because at 14, 15 item level, you can look to start building a 4x3 set of engravings for yourself. And I really only briefly mentioned engravings at this point because you don't really need a 4x3 until you're, finishing Argus or Abyss. A 3x3 is totally fine, like I said earlier. But at 14, 15 item level, you'll have access to doing normal vault-in. And normal vault-in is where your engravings are going to start to matter a lot more, because you want to be able to make yourself, your character, more appealing to be able to join into groups with. And again, when I say 3x3 or 4x3 engravings, I'm just mean having 3 or 4 level 3 engravings that are going to be useful for your character. And you can get engravings through a few different means. One being your accessories, the other one being your ability stone, and then you have 2 slots for equipable engravings that you can learn from books. The rarity of an accessory is going to determine the highest level roll it can roll on the engraving. Like a legendary accessory can only roll a max of +3 to 1 engraving and +3 on a secondary engraving, whereas relic accessories can roll a +5 to 1 engraving and a +3 on the secondary engraving. And it's much easier to be able to obtain more points into a single engraving when you can get +5 on a relic piece compared to only having +3s on legendary pieces. So depending on what class you're playing, the engravings can vary. So you'll probably want to do a little bit of build research on what your actual class will want to use. And maybe if you'd like a future video on what class engravings I use for all of the characters that I play, then let me know down in the comments. At 14, 15 item level though, it'll be fairly cheap to get a 4x3 build when you can utilize relic accessories. And again, these relic accessories can roll with a +5 on one particular engraving and a +3 on a secondary one. You also get the ability to use relic ability stones. Now, these ability stones, you have a chance of faceting a certain point into an engraving that's already on the stone. So in this case, we have a 7/7 stone that's for Supercharge Ambush Master. So when I equip it, I get 7 points into Supercharge and 7 points into Ambush Master. This is super good because you have a much higher chance of getting a stone that's very usable for you, and a 4x3 build doesn't even really require you to have a stone, so anything that you are able to get on your stone is just going to make it that much cheaper for you in the long run. This is really good because these stones cost way too many fions to try and do, so just getting one of these stones that you can use that make it usable is going to cut costs down quite a bit, because these, you don't want to be spending a whole bunch of fions on rocks when you don't really need to, just to get a 4x3 build. Another slight downside to getting the relic accessories is that they do cost more fions than legendary accessories, and the fion cost is always kind of like, it's a hidden tax for buying gear. But they have recently reduced the amount of fions required to purchase relic accessories and legendaries, so it's 25 down to 15 for relic accessories, and it used to be 15 for legendary, and now it's down to 9. So there's quite a bit difference there, and that'll help make it a little bit cheaper for you. Also, with getting to 14, 15 item level, you are going to lose access to being able to get gold from hard mode Abyss, but you'll now be replacing that with gold income that you get from Vault-in. And so as you do Vault-in, you'll be able to get these items called demonic beast bones. And these are used to craft your relic set. However, you can't craft the relic set until you reach 1445 item level. You'll need to just keep honing your legendary gear until you've gotten to 1445 item level. Normal Vicus will also unlock at 1430 item level, which will let you start collecting Covetous Wings, and you need Covetous Wings to craft basically half of the Relic set. You'll have Demonic Beast Bones and Covetous Wings to be able to craft your full remaining Relic set. There are efficient routes that are posted all over the place that will tell you to do, hone more armor pieces more than your weapon. But at this point, with the price of mats, it's better to just hone all of your pieces of gear up to plus 17. That's going to be when you get to 1445 item level. Because you don't really want to skimp out on your weapon too much. You're going to have to upgrade it anyways, and you're getting to the next breakpoint in item level doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to do the next bit of content very easily. And that's not necessarily because like your character's not capable of it, but because you're getting into content where a lot of people are kind of just running through it to get through it every week, and they are going to be looking for players that are a little bit you know more focused on power gain to be able to clear the raid faster. But once you've gotten to 1445 though, you can finally make your relic set. Now, relic sets are where gearing becomes a little bit more interesting, as well as giving you quite a large power increase, because the set bonuses that are tied to relic gear are much better than they were when you were making your legendary set. Uh, when you transfer your legendary gear to your relic gear, it will be 1-to-1. It will remain the same. So if you transfer a plus 17 piece of gear to relic, it's going to stay plus 17. You're going to have the same item level with a slight stat increase. And there are several relic sets that you're going to want to pick from. Depending on what class you play will vary a little bit on which ones you use. But no matter what set you're trying to make, you will need Covetous Wings, and you're going to need a pretty decent amount of Covetous Wings. Now, normal Vicus up to this point has only been giving you 6 Covetous Wings, but when you go do hard mode Vicus at 1460, you can end up getting 12. But at 1445 item level, that's when you're going to unlock hard mode Vaultin. You won't have hard mode Vicus for a little bit later. Hard mode Vaultin, though, will double the amount of double demonic beast bones that you get per week, and some sets will require a pretty decent chunk of demonic beast bones, and other ones are going to require a little bit less. So you should end up having at least 2 or 4 pieces of your relic sets within a couple weeks without too much of an issue. But your next goal is going to be wanting to hone to 1460, kind of. I say kind of because 1460 is kind of a tricky item level to stay at, because it will unlock your ability to do hard mode Vicus, but it doesn't really unlock your ability to get into a hard mode Vicus group. So this is because a lot of people are still doing this as like a weekly run, and will most likely be trying to complete the raid fairly quickly, which in turn makes people less likely to accept people that are on item level for the raid. So I would suggest that as you continue to hone your gear closer to 1460 item level, which is going to be plus 18 on everything, just to think about how fast you can go beyond 1460. It's going to benefit you a lot more if you're able to push past 1460 item level just like a few more hones, compared to trying to do hard mode Vicus at 1460 for several hours and possibly not even doing it because you couldn't find a group. This doesn't mean that it's impossible to do the raid at 1460 item level, but it's, worst case scenario, it's better to just do normal Vicus to get some wings than not do the raid at all because you couldn't do hard mode at 1460 item level. Once you've reached 1460, things are also going to start slowing down in terms of honing by quite a bit. The material requirement will be quite a bit higher, as well as the success chance being quite a bit lower than getting to this point, meaning that you're basically going to have to farm more than ever for your hones right now. So, and your next checkpoint's going to be at 1475, which will be another hone on each one of your pieces of gear. But at 1475 is going to be when you unlock the ability to do normal Kakul-Saydon, and this is going to be where your build matters the most, because Clown has a much tighter DPS check for players that are on item level of the raid, and gatekeeping is going to be much more prominent for this raid because of that reason. So, because of that, I suggest that players stay at 1472.5 item level, which is like one hone away from hitting 1475, until you've farmed a fairly good amount of mats to make a push past 1475. And while you're farming these materials, I would very strongly suggest looking to invest in getting an engraving build that is going beyond 4x3. Getting a 5x3 build becomes increasingly important because of those tight DPS checks, but most importantly, the gatekeeping that comes with normal Clown. So it'll just help you get accepted into groups a little bit easier. And there's a couple routes to take for getting 5x3, and I'll be going more in depth with these in a future video on planning out engravings. But just note that for your main character, you will benefit in the long term by buying the class engraving books, the legendary class engraving books for your character. And in a lot of cases, for an alt, you'll benefit from getting +5 class engraving accessories if you don't plan on taking them up to ancient gear, relatively soon. However, this can change and vary depending on, what class you are and what kind of ability stone you cut. But progression wise, getting a 5x3 setup will be your best bet for completing normal Clown, and will make, getting into Brelshaza later a lot easier for you. And another great thing to be looking out for during this time period, like while you're farming, is upgrading your tripods. Upgrading your tripods is going to be from Chaos Dungeon gear. You'll get these amulets that will let you have a chance of upgrading certain tripods. And if you upgrade these tripods, then it will, give you a pretty significant power gain on each one of your skills. I would look at getting at least level 4 tripods on all of your skills at this time period too. The other reason why I suggest holding at 1472.5 is because of your gold income from raids. You'll still receive gold from Argus all the way up until 1475. And you've been receiving that since 1370. So reaching 1475 and losing that income would normally be made up by completing normal Clown. However, I've seen many times where people hone and they get past 1475 and they don't actually complete Clown for many weeks because of whether gatekeeping is preventing them, or they're just kind of nervous about going and doing the raid, and they just lose out on a bit of income that they were normally used to getting. And at this point, you've probably seen some things that suggest that Clown is significantly harder than the previous raids, which is pretty fair to say. However, this shouldn't really deter you from trying the raid out. I find that everyone is more than capable of clearing Clown with enough practice, but finding a group to give you that practice can be difficult. And I say this in all of my Clown coaching groups, that Clown is one of the funnest raids to do, and it's also one of the most tilting raids to do. But if you've been used to receiving gold from Argus and get to 1475 and you lose that gold and you don't complete at least the first 2 gates of Clown, then you're just cutting off a source of your weekly income, which is only going to hinder your ability to progress forward. This is why I suggest holding at 1472.5 until you've farmed enough mats to push a little bit closer to 1490 right away. And investing into a 5x3 build in the meantime is a great power gain for your character, and it also makes your character look a lot better. Not on top of that, when you go into Clown, having a 5x3 build will make Clown's DPS checks through especially Gate 2 much easier and let you hone past 1475 without having to really worry about too much on additional power gains from your character. There won't be a major need to get a further engraving build past 5x3 for a really long while after this. And for most people, you won't cut the ability stone required to do so for a while, and you'll need to reach ancient quality accessories to go beyond it without needing one of those ridiculously hard to cut stones anyways. So at what point should you start doing normal clown? Realistically, you'll want to be a few hones above 1475 and a 5x3 build, or at an absolute minimum 4x3 plus 2 build being 1480 plus. And that'll give you a much better chance of being viewed as a valid candidate for a group, but your item level is not the only thing that matters at this point. As I said with Clown, it's very worth having a 5x3 build as well, and you'll want to have mostly a good set of level 7 gems. And I'll go a bit more into gems a little bit later on in the video. But let's say you're at a 5x3 build, and you've honed past 1475 with all your mats that you farmed. What do you get from doing normal clown? Well, you get mayhem horns. Mayhem horns are used to upgrade your current relic set to level 2. This doesn't make the stats any better on the piece of gear, but it upgrades the set bonus that's tied to it. And it takes 10 mayhem horns to upgrade an armor piece from level 1 to 2, and it takes 25 horns for your weapon. Completing one normal clown run and buying all 3 of the Sidereal Blessing chests will give you 10 total mayhem horns. You can upgrade one piece of armor a week, and at a minimum, it will take 2 weeks for you to upgrade your weapon, because there is an auction at the end of the raid where you could potentially buy a chest that contains 5 more horns. In order to benefit from the level increase on your set though, you need to wear the appropriate amount of level 2 pieces to activate the level 2 set bonus. Meaning that wearing 2 armor pieces that are level 2 will give you level 2 set bonus. And the same is true with 4 set bonus and 6 set bonus. I mentioned the auction chest at the end, which can speed up the process of obtaining the horns by a couple of weeks at the cost of some extra gold, but you will be having to compete with other people in your group. Personally, I never bought the chest until I was ready to upgrade my weapon, but it can be valued more by you or valued less by the group you're running with, and you could get it relatively cheap to help you out. Having a full set of level 2 gear will help even further with getting accepted into groups by a lot, and will also be a very good power source for your character once you've reached that 5x3 build, because most of your power gains after the 5x3 build are going to come from gems, tripods, and your item level. So having a relatively cheap way to increase how much damage you do is a good thing for your character, but by no means will this need to stop you from honing your character further. So at this point, you should be sitting pretty well with a good set of gems and a 5x3 build, and you can start honing your character to 1490. At 1490, you'll gain access to Brelshaza gates 1 and 2, and you also get access to bracelets. For most people, you'll find that the first 2 gates in Brelshaza are much easier on item level compared to Clown, with some exception. Gate 1 can kill you very fast if you aren't super aware of some of the attacks that are on the ground, and Gate 2 relies mostly on the person who is soloing Prokel. And I'll be making another video series in the very near future about the Legion Raid bosses to help people get more acquainted with mechanics that are a little bit simpler to understand. but it's good to do a little bit of research ahead of time so that you kind of know what's going on before you go into the fight. Generally, it won't be the hardest thing for you to find groups for this raid if you've got level 7 gems, a 5x3 build, and at least 4 pieces of your level 2 relic gear from Clown. Bracelets are sort of a luxury piece. For the average player, a bracelet that rolls your 2 main stats, like spec and crit, will be more than enough for what you want. There's a lot of RNG involved with rolling bracelets, and if you think that buying a bunch of them from the auction house to roll over and over again is a good thing, it's only going to be sadness. So at 1490 item level, you'll be able to do Brelshaza Gate 1 for the first time. And after completing this first one, you will get a first time clear reward, which is a little bit different from the ones in other Legion raids in that it actually gives you some of the mats that you need from Brelshaza. So your first time clear reward from Brelshaza Gate 1 will give you 30 Phantom Horns. You don't get one from any of the other gates, it's just from Gate 1. But if you buy the Sidril Blessing chest from Gate 1 and 2, as well as completing the raid, you'll get 12 total from doing the raid and 30 more from the first time clear reward, meaning you'll get a total of 42 Phantom Horns. Phantom Horns are used to craft the upper relic gear, and armor pieces require 40 Phantom Horns, and your weapon requires 100. This is an entirely new set of gear that will enable you to receive a higher maximum item level on the piece. And when you transfer your lower relic to your upper relic, you'll receive a slight item level gain just from transferring the gear. The plus number on your gear will also go down, but the actual item level on the gear will actually go up. And this new upper relic gear maxes out at plus 20, which is 1590 item level. You also get a higher base chance of success when you're honing these new pieces compared to what they were in your lower relic set. So just by obtaining the upper relic pieces, you'll have an easier time trying to push to a higher item level above 1490 than you did going from, say, 1475 to 1490. And if all of your gear was 1490 item level, or it was all plus 20, in the lower relic set, when you transfer your new piece of gear to the upper relic set, it will become plus 12, and that's going to be 1510 item level. So after one piece of gear, you will be at 1493.33 item level just from getting your first piece of gear after doing Brelshaza Gate 1 and 2. The next checkpoint in item level, though, is going to be at 1500, where you'll unlock the ability to do Brelshaza Gate 3 and 4. To hit this item level with only one piece of upper relic gear will require you to hone that new upper relic piece about 4 times. And this can seem like a lot, but remember that your base chance of success goes up. And so you'll have a 10% base chance on your first hone, and then the next 2 hones that you do are going to be a 5% base chance, and then the last one would be a 4% base chance. All of those are better than your lower relic set that was sitting at a 3% base chance of going from 20 to 21. But you will be using a higher level material at this point to hone these pieces. As it currently is on the market, Great Honor Leapstones are only slightly cheaper than the Marvelous Honor Leapstones that are used to hone your upper relic piece. So in terms of gold, this won't be more expensive, but generally it'll be cheaper with the higher success chance. However, these pieces require quite a bit more silver and a bit more gold per attempt per hone. So for the more casual or people just getting into this content, you might find it better to run Brelshaza Gate 1 and 2 until you've obtained 2 upper relic pieces, because then you're only going to need to hone each of those pieces twice, and both of those will have pretty good chances of success. At 1500 item level, though, you'll start to obtain your upper relic set considerably faster because you'll be getting 28 total phantom horns from 1 through 4 if you buy all of the blessing chests. And that gives you roughly an armor piece every 2 weeks at this point, and it will depend solely on how you gauge how fast you want to accelerate your item level at this point. It won't be insanely difficult for you to get to 1520 to complete 5 and 6, which lets you get 16 more phantom horns for completing it if you buy the blessing chest. And completing a full 1 through 6 run will give you a total of 44 phantom horns and let you make an armor piece a week. But it does come with a difficulty increase, and that your time in raid might increase pretty dramatically. So if you don't have like, time to do that every single week, and you don't think that you're going to do it every week, then 1 through 4 is totally fine for crafting your pieces of gear. It's also, well, 5 and 6 are also not necessarily a weekly activity that most people do once they've reached their full upper relic set. So finding a group can add on to that time as well. Not that there aren't groups, there's plenty of groups going, but it could add a little bit extra time, or people might be looking for people that are considerably higher item level at this point. You could shave off a couple of weeks of crafting your full relic set by pushing a fewer number of upper relic pieces to 1520 overall, or take a little bit more time and do 5 and 6 after you've gotten a fair amount of armor pieces and you were able to get to 1520 at a more reasonable pace, and finish off your weapon or whatever remaining pieces that you have. At this point, this is the highest current content, and you'll be able to access everything though, so it's not like there's a major rush going forward. However, we are going to be getting Brelshaza hard mode in April, and Brelshaza hard mode does have a higher item level requirement for doing it, and it gives us access to materials to upgrade to the ancient set. You'll receive the same amount of hard mode mats from Brelshaza as you did phantom horns from normal mode, and the required amount for each piece is the same, so it's going to be 40 for an armor piece and 100 for a weapon. Hard mode Brelshaza starts at 1540 item level for gate 1 and 2. It's 1550 for 3 and 4, and 1560 for 5 and 6. And for veterans of the game, at this point, pushing to 1560 to do Brelshaza hard mode 1 through 6 on week 1 is very possible, but note that this will mostly just be for pushing your item level higher faster, but that will still be the end of what content is available for us. So at least in global release for quite a while. And it's mostly for like, bragging rights or your own self-satisfaction. The ancient set will be a 1-to-1 transfer, like you were going from legendary to relic. So if you have a plus 20 piece of relic gear or upper relic gear and you're going to transfer it to an ancient piece of gear, it will still be plus 20 and the same item level, but you do get a very small stat increase on the gear. But mostly it's going to enable us to hone past plus 20. The ancient gear can hone all the way up to plus 25. Also, with the Brelshaza hard mode, we'll have access to ancient accessories. And ancient accessories can roll a max of a plus 6 on one engraving and plus 3 on the secondary engraving, so one more higher on the top end engraving from Relic, which will enable most people to go beyond a 5x3 build at this point, where previously during Relic gear, you had to have a ridiculously hard stone to get. You had to get either a 9-7 stone or a 10-6 stone to be able to get 5x3 plus 1. You'll be able to make a 5x3 plus 1 build with a 7-7 stone or an 8-6 stone, which is much more reasonable for pretty much everyone, because that's what you're currently using with your 5x3 build. So your current relic stone can be upgraded to ancient at this point, so you don't need to like re-roll ancient stones. Um, and for now, we don't have any content beyond Brelshaza hard mode coming out soon. So in terms of progression with item level and how much further to go with your that particular build, it's just going to be for your own self satisfaction or being able to kill things faster, doing more damage. So let's talk about gems a little bit. I briefly talked about gems earlier, but gems provide a very reasonable power gain for your character, and you'll obtain more gems just throughout your normal play from doing like chaos dungeons or boss rush and maps, like other various sources too. And I would say at a minimum, you want a full level 5 set of gems when you get to hard mode Vicus at 1460 item level. And then as you progress towards 1475, you're going to want to be replacing those level 5 gems with level 7 gems. Ideally, you'll have a pretty good amount of level 7 gems by the time you're ready to go beyond 1472.5, like when you're starting to push into Clown. And it's not like it's the largest power gain you get from going from a level 5 to a level 7 gem, but it's not nothing, and it does help make your character look quite a bit better and more viable for the content that you're going into at that point. Level 7 gems are totally fine for all the way through Brelshaza though. So once you get a full level 7 gems, you can kind of start upgrading them to level 9s or focus on your alt gems a little bit more at that point. It's totally viable to take the gems that your alts are getting from Chaos Dungeons and fuse them with your mains and kind of increase the amount of higher level gems that you get over time. But don't skimp out on your alts either. Make sure that they're following basically the same breakpoint. If you get to a point though where you're only looking for like one specific damage gem, then it's generally not great to re-roll the gem to try and get it. Obviously, you can get lucky and you can get it within a couple of taps, but this is going to cost a lot of silver over time, and silver becomes increasingly valuable, especially when you get into the Brelshaza gear, because of how much silver it takes just to hone those pieces of. So it's probably worth it if you get a level 7 gem and it's not the one you want, just sell it and buy the one that you want. Last couple of things that I want to mention here is that if you play a support class like a bard or a paladin or the very soon releasing artist, minimum item level in a 3x3 build is technically good enough to get you into just about any content that you've unlocked, because people love supports. We need supports. You know, we want to take the supports because they give us huge damage buffs and they give us nice healing. But you'll be significantly more useful by not cheaping out and getting at least a 4th engraving, and try and get some cooldown gems to help you out as well. And I mentioned earlier that there are several efficient paths to take when honing your character to certain item levels. But just bear in mind that reaching a minimum item level to unlock new content is all that you get from that. It doesn't get you into groups, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna have an easy time at completing the content. If you're purposely not honing your weapon because it's cheaper to hone armor pieces instead, there are certain breakpoints where you'll still be gatekept more for having a lower level weapon, or just cheaping out on other power gains on your character as well. And this will be mostly significant around 1475 when you start to do Clown. But if you're just looking to unlock the next Chaos Dungeon or the next Guardian or whatever, it's very reasonable to hone your armor pieces first. Getting to 1460 plus though, you're still looking at the most efficient routes just being upgrading each piece of gear one at a time to get to the next level. And I've mentioned a few times that there are some breakpoints that are good for your character to avoid gatekeeping, And I see often newer players will simply try to just hone their characters as much as they can, because getting a higher item level is easier to see as an increase in power than the not so obvious things like engravings, tripods, and gems. But it's important to not get too hung up on your item level. Your item level is a very reasonable thing to focus on at certain points, like up to 1472.5. But once you've reached Clown, like I said, it's very important to put a stronger focus on making sure the rest of your character is as well equipped, and you don't want to spend all your gold just honing and just to get gate kept and uh, not having like a good engraving build. And you might also find that some of the raids to be pretty intimidating or hard to get into without a lot of clears under your belts. And this is where I strongly suggest finding a new player friendly community that will make this a little bit easier for you. And a great example is if you play on NA East region, I have a Discord that I run myself where we do weekly coaching groups for every single Legion raid to help people get more acquainted with boss fights and just raiding in general. So if you play on NA East and you're looking to get into raiding or get into some of the raids that you might not have done yet, please join the Discord down below and just sign up for the raids. That covers just about all the gear progression that you're going to see through Lost Ark up to our current global release of Lost Ark. I hope you got some good information or guidance on how to improve your character some. If you have any additional questions, feel free to drop by my Twitch stream where I stream every day at twitch.tv/DJ Dorog, and I'll be glad to help you out. Have a good one, and peace.